for that. My concern is this is only a 3-year reauthorization. I hope we can continue bipartisan support to continue us beyond the 3 years, so it's not having to be linked to other trade agreements. But I think our committee has some work to do to improve a very successful program. I encourage my colleagues to support it, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Michigan.
I would just say that I have no other speakers, so I'm prepared to close, so I'll reserve at this time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Washington.
Madam Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Smith.
Gentleman from Washington is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thanks to the Ways and Means Committee for their excellent work on the trade agreements and, most importantly, on trade adjustment assistance. And I agree with the comments of my colleague from Wisconsin about why this program is so important. I mean, the bottom line is TAA and the trade agreements themselves are part of figuring out how to help American workers and the American economy compete in a very, very difficult global economic situation. The amount of skills that our workers need now are vastly beyond what they've needed in previous generations, and the need to update them constantly in order to continue to be competitive and continue to be employable are a significant challenge for American workers, and this program is one way to give them help, to help get them the training and the skills that they need to continue to be employable. And it is incredibly important for our workers, and we've heard the statistics about the number of workers in our country who have benefited from these programs. But I also submit to you that it's critically important to our economy. Our economy needs a skilled workforce enabled in order to compete. Trade adjustment assistance is one way to help our workers get those skills that they need. Certainly it helps them, but it also helps our businesses and our overall economy. And I, along with my colleague from Wisconsin, I support all 3 trade agreements. I believe trade is critically important to growing our economy as well, and it's simple math. 95% of the people in this world live someplace other than the United States of America, but the United States of America is responsible for 20% of the world's consumption. If we're going to grow, we need access to other markets. Korea, Colombia, and Panama are good steps in that direction to give us access to those other markets so that our businesses can have the possibility of growing their businesses and taking advantage of the growing economy. It has been Asia and other parts of the world that are growing the most. We need access to those markets. Trade agreements like this give us that opportunity. But as I have said for the entire 15 years I've been in Congress, that alone is not sufficient to protect American workers and our economy. Access to overseas markets on its own isn't enough to take care of our workers as they should be taken care of. They need training, and we need the enforceable. Can I have an additional 30 seconds? I don't know if you have any more time. Jim, do you have 30 seconds before I could have?
The gentleman would like an additional minute. Go ahead.
Certainly.
Gentleman's recognized for an additional minute.
And that's the other critical piece of these trade agreements that I want to emphasize. For the first time, not the first time, actually, we did it in Peru. Thanks to the leadership of the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, and Mr. Rangel, and others, we have enforceable workers' rights in all 3 of these agreements. There have been justifiable criticisms, for instance, in Colombia, of the ability of workers to organize and collectively bargain. But this agreement will give us the enforceable ability to make sure that they do. If Colombia or any one of these countries doesn't live up to the ILO standards and requirements, this agreement now gives us the ability to use trade sanctions to make sure that they do. That is an incredibly important step forward to protect the workers in this country. It needs to work together. Access to overseas markets through trade agreements and adequate protections for our workers so they can compete in that environment. With TSA, with the workers' rights provisions in these trade agreements, I believe that all 3 trade agreements and this TAA bill do this, and I thank the Ways and Means Committee, both Republican and Democrat, for their work in making this happen. Thank you.
Gentleman from Michigan continues to reserve.
Reserve.
Gentleman from Washington.
Madam Speaker, I yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin.
The gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 4 minutes.
Unanimous consent to revise and extend.
The gentleman's recognized without objection.
I rise in strong support of this proposal, this bill. It restarts TAA and the GSP program. You know, this should have happened long ago. The Republican decision to let it lapse, it was over 8 months ago, was very wrong. And as a result, and we're not sure of the exact numbers because that isn't public, but hundreds of service workers were completely shut out. Fewer manufacturing workers became eligible, and those who did qualify for TAA received less assistance and support. So now we're taking action today that's long overdue. I heard last night somebody said that the trade agreements were being held, in quotes, hostage to the TAA program. They just got it 180 degrees wrong. It was the TAA program that was being held hostage to trade agreements, and that never should have happened. Well, and now we can act, and I just want to say, some people, I think, look upon TAA as kind of the teaspoon of sugar to make the trade agreements go down. That could not be more incorrect. What TAA does is to help those who are thrown out of work because of trade, through no fault of their own. And if we're going to have a competitive workforce, people need to be able to be retrained. And interestingly enough, if you go to any place where TAA operates, you'll see a wide variety of people who have become eligible and who are being helped. So I very, very much support this bill, which preserves the integrity, though not all, of the TAA program and the 2009 reports. And I close by saying I also support the GSP provisions in this bill. I think there's a misconception. It does help indeed developing countries who rely on the GSP, but as our ranking member knows from all of his work, it also benefits American companies and the workers they employ. In fact, the majority of GSP imports are inputs used to support U.S. manufacturing, including raw materials, parts and components, and machinery and equipment. So not only did failing to extend GSP hurt developing countries, it hurt American businesses and their employees. A wide spectrum supports this bill, and I hope all of us on this side of the aisle will vote in favor of it. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. Gentleman from Michigan continues to reserve.
I believe the gentleman's yielded back all the balance of their time. No?
No.
Then I'll continue to reserve.
Gentleman from Washington has 5.5 minutes
Speaker,
remaining.
how much time do I have?
Gentleman from Washington has 5.5 minutes remaining, and the gentleman from Michigan has 13.5 minutes. Gentleman from Washington.
God, we could have quite a speech here. Madam Speaker and members of the House, I think that it's important that we're passing this TAA today. But it is just the tip of the iceberg of the problems faced by workers in this country. I think that we are picking one group and saying, well, if you can qualify for having lost your job because of international trade adjustment of one sort or another, you're eligible for some benefits. But I think that in the much larger sense, the House faces a problem. We're seeing it in the streets. We're seeing it down at Wall Street. We're seeing it on my Central Plaza. We're seeing it here in Washington, D.C. We're seeing it in Atlanta. The workers of this country are very upset. And there is a long agenda that's sort of dealt with here for one small group of workers that ought to be available for all workers. Now, we are going to have to extend unemployment benefits at the end of this year, unless, like last year, at Christmas time, we'll be saying to people, you know what, we don't care about you, you're done, because we haven't extended unemployment benefits. We ought to be doing it right now. It'll be caught in the crush of all of what happens at the end of the year, but it needs to happen. Foreclosure relief. We continue to have foreclosures in this country with no way out for the workers of this country, including these. We didn't do anything for foreclosure problems for somebody who's lost their job because of trade. We make no adjustment. We don't say you can lower the amount of your loan or the banks must negotiate. We don't do anything for people who are struggling with foreclosures in this country. Health care. Health care in this bill it makes it possible for people to get health care coverage. But there are thousands and thousands and thousands of workers, 14 million of them walking around in this country with no health care. And we've done nothing this session to implement the Affordable Care Act. And finally, I would just say there's one last issue that needs to be thought about. What happens to a worker who, training or not, exhausts all their unemployment benefits? And they have a family, and they have a house. Now, in the 30s, what people did was back the car up to the house, put the furniture up on top, and drive off and get a job in California. You have got millions of people today who are tied to a house in Flint, Michigan, or Toledo, Ohio, or Elyria, Ohio, or 1,000 places. They can't drive off to Florida and get a job, or to California. They're stuck. And so they find themselves with no access to any kind of way to pay their mortgage. They're going to get foreclosed. Then they can leave, of course. Or we've got to find some way to make it possible for workers in this economy as it recovers to somehow get by. If we don't care, if we just care about the workers who are lost because of trade, that's nice, and we ought to do that. We're doing the right thing. But we ought to be thinking much broader than that if we're serious about coming out of this recovery, or this problems we've got in this economy at this point. I urge everyone to vote for this bill and begin the drumbeat for the unemployment insurance extension and a couple of other things. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the remainder of his time. The gentleman from Michigan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself the balance of my time.
And the gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I support H.R. 2832, the bill which renews the general system of preferences known as GSP and also contains the Trade Adjustment Assistance, also called TAA. This bill really is the cornerstone of a carefully crafted bipartisan and bicameral agreement that then prompted the President to send the trade agreements, the 3 trade agreements, to the Congress last Monday. So this has allowed us, this legislation today has allowed us to move forward on a long-stalled trade agenda. The bill renews GSP, which the House passed last month, and that is the largest trade preference program that is estimated to account for over 82,000 U.S. jobs that are directly or indirectly related to that program. The second portion of this bill, the bill that reauthorizes trade adjustment assistance, is absolutely critical because it is one of the core items that has allowed these trade agreements to come forward. And this legislation really does ensure smaller government and less spending on an important program in these difficult economic times where we have a growing debt and deficit. This program was streamlined and scaled back, and just quickly I'll note some of the highlights. There is no TAA for public sector workers. The number of weeks was reduced from 156 in the 2009 law down to 117 weeks. Also, there is no double dipping. These benefits run concurrently with current unemployment insurance or UI benefits. So, and the health care subsidy was reduced in this legislation. We also eliminated half of the allowable justifications for the program's training waivers to make sure that those who are eligible for TAA are in those training programs with only limited exceptions. And we also consolidated and reduced all the non-income support expenditures. We reduced funding for the TAA for firms and also added enhanced performance measures. Now, no worker will qualify for this unless certified by the Department of Labor. And this is an important attempt to bring some reform and integrity to our unemployment programs, particularly by strengthening the job training provision. where 80% of the waivers were used to waive people out of the requirement they job train. This is an important reform, and it's going to be an important reform in this bill to make sure we implement it, so as we move forward on the unemployment insurance debate, as the gentleman from Washington State alluded to, later this year, we actually have a track record on some of these items and can see how they're at least beginning to work. So I urge my colleagues to support not only all three trade agreements, but also what really was the cornerstone for bringing those three trade agreements to the floor, H.R. 2832, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the remainder of his time, and all time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 425, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the motion that the House concur in the Senate amendment, and those in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed will say no. In the opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The gentleman from Washington. The gentleman is asking for the ayes and nays.
Ayes.
Ayes and nays are requested, and those in favor of a vote by the ayes and nays will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, the ayes and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, in the order of the House of today, further proceedings on this question are postponed. Pursuant to Clause 1C of Rule 19, further consideration of H.R. 3078 will now resume, and the clerk will report the title.
Union Calendar Number 156, H.R. 3078, a bill to implement the United States-Colombia Trade Promotion Agreement.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise?
I have a motion to recommit it to desk.
Is the gentleman opposed to the bill?
I am.
The clerk will report the motion. The gentleman qualifies. The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Levin of Michigan moves to recommit the bill, H.R. 3078, to the Committee on Ways and Means with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendments. At the end of the bill, add the following. Title 7, Currency Reform for Fair Trade Act, Section 701, short title. This title may be cited as the Currency Reform for Fair Trade Act. Section 702, clarification regarding definition of counter-available subsidy. A, benefit conferred, Section 7715.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the reading be dispensed with, and I reserve a point of order.
Is there objection? If not, without objection, pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 5 minutes, and the point of order is reserved. The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes in support of his motion.
I yield myself 3 minutes.
Gentleman may not yield blocks of time. The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I want everybody to know what this is. This is a bill on currency. This is the opportunity for people to once again stand up and be counted. This is the bill that passed last year, 349 to 79, with 99 Republicans supporting it. This is the House bill that has 225 co-sponsors, more than 60 Republicans. You know, it's clear China's currency manipulation is a major cause of hundreds of thousands of lost manufacturing jobs, and imports from China are about half of that. So we're talking about 1 million jobs at the least. What's also clear is that the manipulation of currency tilts the playing field in favor of China at least 25%, and it's not getting better. China's currency manipulation isn't the only cause of that deficit and loss of jobs, but because it's not the only cause doesn't mean we should address it. It's a major one. It's clear we haven't been effectively confronting China on this issue, and China pushes ahead. So in a word or a few words, the time has come for action. 8 years of talk have yielded very meager results. As said, this has broad bipartisan support. And to make it utterly clear, Last night, the Senate passed a bill on currency by 63 to 35. 16 Republican senators supported it. This will not kill the bill. It will send it back. It will not send it back to committee. If adopted, the bill will immediately go to passage. So, as I said, now is the moment for all of us to be counted, to stand up and be counted. No excuses. As Robert Samuelson said in the Post last weekend, there's already a trade war between them and us, but only one side is fighting. Now we'll make sure that both sides are in this effort. I now yield the balance of my time to the gentleman from Pennsylvania who is so active on this issue, Mr. Kritz.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
I appreciate the gentleman from Michigan for yielding, and I thank him for his leadership on this important issue. As the chamber closest to the people, the House works best when it is allowed to work its will. Those aren't my words. They're a direct quote of Speaker Boehner. Since China's 2001 entry into the World Trade Organization, we have lost nearly 3 million manufacturing jobs, and our overall trade deficit with China has grown to over $273 billion. Our manufacturers are hurting. The American people are hurting. We were sent here to lead. Here is our chance. We're talking about creating over 2 million American jobs and reducing our annual trade deficit by over $70 billion. The Speaker warns of a trade war. You want to talk about a trade war? Ask the workers in industries like steel tubing, like tires and solar, who've lost their jobs because of China's unfair trade practices. At some point, we have to stand up and do what's right for the American people. You gain respect through strength. This is our moment of truth. This bill has broad bipartisan support. We must send a strong message that the United States will not stand idly by while foreign currency manipulators destroy American manufacturing jobs. It's time to stand up and be leaders for the American people, to defend their interests over all others. At any rate, Madam Speaker, it's time to stop being part of the problem and become part of the solution. Lead, follow, or get out of the way. And as the Speaker said, let the House work its will. I urge my colleagues to stand up for America, to level the playing field with China. Support this motion to recommit.
Gentleman from Michigan.
How much time do I have remaining?
Gentleman from Michigan has 15 seconds remaining.
That's all it will take. The issue is clear. Act, act. You must stand up and be counted. This is the moment on currency for every member of the House.
Gentleman's time's expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise?
Madam Speaker, I withdraw the point of order, and I rise to oppose this motion to recommit.
Point of order is withdrawn, and the gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, the implementing bill before us reflects a carefully negotiated agreement that involved the White House, the U.S. Trade Representative, and bipartisan staffs and members from both Ways and Means and Finance. All four offices were consulted at every step of the process, and all sides were fully involved. This provision was not part of that negotiation. In fact, it was not even raised during negotiations, and this threatens to undo the carefully negotiated terms of this compromise and set our trade agenda back. This motion is a true poison pill. Any change, even moving a single comma, would strip the bill of fast-track protections under Trade Promotion Authority in the United States Senate. Thus, this motion really isn't about Chinese currency practices. It's an effort to kill the Colombian Free Trade Agreement. In fact, the irony is that the only reason the minority is even allowed to offer this motion is because then Speaker Pelosi took the unprecedented step of turning off the clock on TPA 3 years ago on the Colombian Trade Agreement. Passing this or any other motion would reward that decision to put our trade agenda on ice, a decision that hurt our economy, cost us jobs, as U.S. farmers and exporters lost out on opportunities in that fast-growing country. Finally, with respect to the substance of this motion, everyone agrees that China's currency is undervalued. China must let its currency appreciate and commit to allow market supply and demand to determine its value. But at the same time, we need to recognize that currency is not the only barrier to U.S. businesses that U.S. businesses face in China, and that legislation on currency is not a silver bullet. I plan to hold a hearing in the Ways and Means Committee this month on all of these issues, including currency, but this is the wrong vehicle for such legislation and would kill the very important Colombian trade agreement. I therefore urge defeat of this motion and passage of this important trade agreement and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. And without objection, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion, and those in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chairs, the noes have it, the noes have it. The gentleman from Michigan asks for the ayes and nays. Those favoring a vote by the ayes and nays will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, the ayes and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. And pursuant to Clause 8 and Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on the motion to recommit will be followed by 5-minute votes on passage of H.R. 3078, if ordered, passage of H.R. 3079, passage of H.R. 3080, adoption of the motion to concur in the Senate amendment to H.R. 2832, and the motion to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2433. This will be a 15-minute vote.
A very rare day in Congress in that both bodies, the House and the Senate, are considering essentially the same legislation, 3 free trade agreements, with both bodies likely to pass later today those 3 bills. The House today wrapping up debate on the trade agreements with Colombia, Panama, and South Korea. The Senate also debating those 3 free trade agreements. Here in the House, a series of 6 votes, beginning with a motion to recommit on the Colombia Free Trade Agreement, with Democrats essentially asking the body to pass, in this motion to recommit, the China currency bill, which passed in the Senate late yesterday afternoon. The Hill wrote earlier this week about that, saying that House Democrats have been attempting to force a floor vote on that legislation, that China currency legislation, through a discharge petition which requires 218 signatures. The Hill writing that the Republican leadership has warned its members against signing the discharge petition, but GOP lawmakers said that they will join forces with Democrats on the petition if President Obama commits to signing the bill. That's essentially the nature of this motion to recommit made there by Sandra Levin of Michigan. It's a 15-minute vote. It'll be followed by votes on the 3 free trade agreements and the extension of the trade preferences program, including the Trade Adjustment Assistance Program. This first vote is 15 minutes, and the remaining votes, the trade agreements and one final suspension bill after that, will all be 5-minute votes. Again, it's a day that's seeing both the House and Senate take up these trade agreements, and we spoke earlier to a Capitol Hill reporter. We're joined by Vicki Needham of The Hill. Why did it take nearly 5 years for these trade agreements to make it to Congress for approval?
Well, when the Bush administration finished these agreements, the Democrats were in control of both houses of Congress, and they said they would not take up the deals. During the Obama administration, they've tweaked the deals and finished most of them. Actually, they finished all of them by the spring, from December into about April. They had them all ready to go. But since then, there were some debate among the Congress and the White House about how to best get them passed, and there was also a program called Trade Adjustment Assistance that the White House wanted included, and it took several months to get an agreement to get these deals up to Capitol Hill.
You mentioned the administration tweaking the deals, but what spurred the administration to push these through for approval?
Well, they certainly have said that they expect that these deals will create jobs, and certainly the economy has been stagnating for the past few months and not creating the necessary number of jobs to bring down the unemployment rate. So that's really been the catalyst behind pushing these along. In addition, a majority of Republicans, and it appears a fair number of Democrats, also agree with these changes that were made to the South Korean deal to help U.S. automakers to ensure that some areas that Panama is not considered it's considered a tax haven, that there were laws changed. So they've sort of made these changes to appeal a little bit more to Democrats, and they obviously have support of Republicans. So now they're moving this through as part of a jobs package.
Supporters saying it will increase jobs, but opponents saying, particularly on the South Korean deal, that it will decrease jobs. Who's in the right here?
Well, that's a big question, and I guess we'll sort of have to see down the road. Certainly, a lot of labor unions oppose the deals altogether. The UAW up in Michigan, from what I've seen, has been pretty supportive of the changes that were made to try to get automobiles over to Korea. So, what the body of evidence is right now is the NAFTA deals that were the NAFTA deal that was passed in the 90s, and unions and opponents have used various figures to show that the trade deficit did increase over that time, and the U.S. lost jobs. And now we'll just have to see really what happens down the road.
What is it about the Colombia trade deal that makes it seem more controversial than the others?
Well, the Colombia trade deal is the biggest issue has been over labor rights there. The administration and the Colombian government came to an agreement over what's called a labor action plan. What that's supposed to do is provide greater protections for labor activists. It's also supposed to ramp up punishment for those who do acts of violence against labor leaders or workers. It gives workers the right to organize. Well, most Democrats, and you'll probably see that tonight in the House, that many Democrats will vote against that deal because they just don't think that the wording in the agreement is strong enough. The labor action plan is not linked to the trade deal, so they just don't think that it provides enough enforcement from the U.S. side if Colombia does any kind of reneging. Now, President Obama and U.S. Trade Representative Ron Kirk have both assured Democrats that no deal will go into force until Colombia has fulfilled that labor action plan.
Is there significant enough an opposition in either the House or Senate to prevent any of these three agreements from being passed today?
It doesn't appear so right now. It appears that there seems to be, and just listening to debate, that there are certainly a majority of Republicans. We'll have to see which way some of the freshman Republicans vote. But it appears that there are certainly enough Democrats to pass these bills and move them very quickly to the Senate and to clear them tonight.
Read Vicki Needham's work at thehill.com. Thank you for that reporting.
Thank you very much.
And votes are underway in the House on the free trade agreements. This is the first. It's a 15-minute vote. This is the motion to recommit, with Democrats essentially seeking to have the China currency manipulation bill passed as the motion to recommit. And again, this is the last chance to change the bill before final passage. Colombia final passage is next, followed by final passage on the Panama Free Trade Agreement and the South Korean Agreement after that. Again, this is a 15-minute vote. There's also debate in the Senate today on the free trade bills. In fact, Senator Sanders is on the Senate floor this hour speaking about it. You can follow that on C-SPAN 2, with votes expected on the free trade bill later in the U.S. Senate. Well, as this vote continues, we're going to give you a sample, a little taste of what the debate was like earlier today on the Colombia free trade bill.
Mr. Speaker, we've been waiting for this trade agreement for a long time. Every day that goes by without them has been a missed opportunity. At a time when our economy is struggling, these trade agreements mean more opportunities for Americans. They mean more American exports, and most importantly, they mean more American jobs. We've already seen the benefits of trade in North Dakota. Our exports have more than doubled over the last 5 years because of our renewed commitment to free trade. These trade agreements before us today could increase exports by $23 million in North Dakota alone and $13 billion nationwide. If we're serious about creating jobs, if we're serious about getting our economy back on track and allowing the U.S. to stay competitive in a fast-moving global market, passing these trade agreements is a critical first step. I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting them. Thank you, and I yield the remainder of my time.
From Michigan, Mr. Levin is recognized.
I yield 1 minute to the very distinguished gentlelady from California, Ms. Capps.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank my colleague for yielding. I rise today in opposition to the Colombia Free Trade Agreement, and I oppose this bill for many reasons. First, Colombia does not yet meet the high standards we should be demanding of our trading partners. While Colombia has made admirable progress, trade unionists continue to be brutally murdered and attacked. This is unacceptable. We can't just look the other way and hope things get better. Second, this agreement makes permanent the trade preferences that have absolutely devastated California's cut flower industry, which produces 80% of domestically grown flowers. This agreement continues millions of dollars in subsidies for Colombia flower growers, but provides no such support for our domestic growers. Now, California's growers have developed a plan to cut costs and compete globally, but they can't do it alone. It's only fair that our domestic flower growers get a little help from their government, too. This FTA is a huge missed opportunity to help this valued domestic industry. For these and so many other reasons, I urge my colleagues to vote no on the Colombia Free Trade Agreement, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I yield a minute to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentlewoman from Kansas, Ms. Jenkins.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for yielding, and thank you for all your leadership in this area. It has been nearly 5 years since we signed our trade agreement with Colombia, and although I'm disappointed that it took this long, I am so pleased we will be ratifying this agreement today. Once this trade deal has passed, we will finally have what our Trade Subcommittee Chairman, Representative Brady, has correctly labeled a Sell American agreement with the third largest economy in South and Central America. Exports of American goods will increase by more than $1 billion, and the ITC expects our stagnant GDP will get a boost of at least $2.5 billion. Not to mention Kansas wheat farmers can look forward to an even larger share of the Colombian grain market. It's been 5 years in the making, but we are finally here. I urge my colleagues to come together and support the pro-jobs, pro-growth Colombian Free Trade Agreement. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
Now my real privilege to yield 3 minutes to the distinguished member of our committee, Mr. Lewis of Georgia.
Gentleman is recognized for 3 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my friend and colleague, Mr. Levin, for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to the United States-Colombia Free Trade Agreement. Now, some of my colleagues do not believe that the issue of human rights and the issue of the rule of law should be addressed through our trade policy. Some believe it is not about stolen land, ramshackle homes. It is not about human rights activists whose families and friends were harassed and disappeared. It is not about murdered labor leaders. It is not about a crisis that is only kin to Sudan. Trade for the sake of trade, money for the sake of money. Let someone else care. Let someone else do it. Let someone else work on human rights. Let someone else fight for justice. Let someone else worry about peace, order, and tranquility. All we need to do is find the cheapest, fastest, and easy way to make a buck. My friends were mistaken to believe that this is not about us, but the crisis in Colombia affects every part of our region. It affects millions forced from their homes. It helped to create the drug cartels and international gangs. It impacts the cost of crack and cocaine on every single street in America. We cannot ask someone else to address the violence. We cannot leave the question of corruption and impunity to another leader, another generation. We must demand these answers now. If we don't, who will? It is up to us. We can do better. It is on our watch. Mr. Speaker, today is a very sad day. We could have taken our time and done it right. Today we are abandoning our duty to the people who elected us and to millions of Colombians who now know that their cries fell on deaf ears and cold hearts. We can do better. We must do better. This Congress, this administration must have the courage to stand up and do what is right and be on the right side of history. It is a missed opportunity for change, for good. We failed to do what is right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Schock.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And first, let me say thank you to the chairman for his leadership in support of these agreements. And let me say I agree with the president. The passage of the Colombia, Panama, and South Korea trade agreement will mean 250,000 new jobs at a time when our economy needs them most. But these trade agreements, Mr. Speaker, aren't just about new jobs. They're about the millions of Americans who rely on new markets and new customers. In my district in Central Illinois alone, Illinois' farmers depend on customers in South Korea, in Panama, and in Colombia. And when the United States of America does nothing, we lose market share. Since the 5 years that this agreement was negotiated, 5 years ago, Colombians purchased 60% of their wheat from the United States farmers. Today, that number is 30%. It's costing jobs and it's costing opportunity here in our country. In manufacturing, in my home area, Caterpillar, one of the major manufacturers of our country, employs a lot of high-wage union jobs, manufacturing jobs. 8 out of 10 of the tractors that are built in my district are sent to other customers around the world. With only 5% of the world's population in this country, it takes a pretty defeatist mentality to believe that our country would be better off not selling to the other 95% of the world. Mr. Speaker, today, the House of Representatives will pass a jobs bill. A jobs bill that can pass the House, a jobs bill that can pass the Senate, and a jobs bill, Mr. Speaker, that the President of the United States has already said he will sign into law. And this jobs bill, Mr. Speaker, does not require a tax increase. This jobs bill does not require us to go into debt. And this jobs bill has bipartisan support and is good not only for current Americans, but more importantly, it's good for future Americans and the future generation of America. I urge passage of these 3 bills. I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin.
I now yield 3 minutes to the ranking member on the Trade Subcommittee, Ways and Means, Mr. McDermott of Washington.
The gentleman is recognized. Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, we are all proud members of the United States Congress. We consider this the preeminent legislative body in the world that sets the standard for how the world should create laws and how we should govern our country. We believe in the rule of law. We talk about it all the time. We're for the rule of law. Well, that is the nub of this argument about why so many of us will vote against the Colombian Free Trade Agreement. Now, we all know the horrors, and we'll hear them repeated again and again. But the fact is that we forced the government of Colombia, President Obama did, to sit down and write a labor action plan in which they said what they would do. We had listened for a couple of years to the previous administration, the Uribe administration, promise, promise, promise. Nothing happened. So this president said, I want it in writing. Write down a labor agreement. It set out the precise steps that Colombia had to take to address the particular problems faced in that country. For example, steps Colombia could take to detect sham subcontractors and punish employers for using them to suppress worker rights. I mean, we went down to very specific things. Why was that? Well, many of us who've been here a while were here when we passed NAFTA. And we thought we'd read it and understood what it meant, but we didn't understand a lot of what happened. Because we agreed that we wouldn't put the labor into the agreement, we'd write a side letter. And we wouldn't put the environment into the agreement, we'd put it in a side letter. Maquiladoras would be taken care of, the Rio Grande would be cleaned up. Nothing happened because it wasn't in the agreement. It did not have the force of law of the United States Congress behind it. So when we came to this, we didn't seal the deal. We said to the President, we want that in there, and the President talked to the Republicans, and back and forth it went, and the Republicans were absolutely, implacably opposed to putting in any mention of the Columbia Action Plan. Now, if somebody says they're going to do something, you take them at their face value. Sure, they're going to do it. Then write it down here. Just let's put it right in there so there's never any confusion about what it was you said you were going to do. But the Republicans insisted that this be as wide open as the NAFTA agreement, that it not have built into it the one thing that makes this so difficult for us to deal with. If we believe in workers' rights, and if we believe in human rights in this place, and we talk about it all the time, we talk about it for every country in the world, but when we write a trade agreement for Colombia, we're unwilling to write in the demands for the Colombian workers. That's what's wrong with this, and that's why most of us will vote against it. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp.
At this time, I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Quayle.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the Chair for his excellent leadership in this, because it's taken 5 years too long, but finally the House will have the opportunity to vote on the 3 pending free trade agreements. And we have to understand that America competes in the global economy, and if we ignore this, we ignore it at our own peril. And while these free trade agreements have been languishing on the President's desk for 5 years, we have actually lost market share to the EU, to Canada, and those are the things that are going to keep our economy from growing again. Now, if you look at just for the Colombia Free Trade Agreement, since we have actually drafted that agreement, $3.85 billion in unnecessary tariffs have been put on American products. When we actually have these free trade agreements in place, we're going to actually add to our economy and add to the jobs here in the United States. In my home district, we have a very robust high-tech sector, and it's very heavily on trade. Last year, we had $10 billion of free trade going out in exports, and a lot of them have been going to countries that we actually have free trade agreements for. And 35,000 jobs are directly related to that. So I think that this is a jobs bill. I urge my colleagues to support all 3 free trade agreements, and I urge its passage.
Fired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin.
How much time on each side, please?
Mr. Levin's got 23 minutes, and the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, has 25 minutes.
Yes, how many?
25. You have 23, sir.
Yeah, sure, I don't care.
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
All right, at this time, Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Ryan.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I thank the gentleman, Mr. Camp, for his leadership. Mr. Speaker, this is just long overdue. This creates jobs. There is an issue that comes to the floor that has bipartisan support rarely these days. The Obama administration estimates this will create 250,000 new jobs. We agree. With respect to Colombia in particular, they have free access to our markets, but we don't have free access to theirs. This gives us a level and equal playing field. Colombia is our strongest ally in the region. Colombia has done so much to help stop the proliferation of drugs coming to this country. They've helped us at the UN. More importantly, they want to buy our products. Where I come from, Mr. Speaker, we make things and we grow things. 20% of all the manufacturing jobs in Wisconsin require exports.
$16.7 billion of our agricultural products in Wisconsin in 2009 were in exports, creating 200,000 jobs in Wisconsin alone. 95% of the world's consumers, they're not in this country, they're in other countries. If you're standing still on trade, you're falling behind. All our trade competitors are going around the world getting better agreements and better deals for their exporters, freezing us out. It's high time we pass these agreements to break down these barriers so that we can make and grow things in America and sell them overseas so we can create jobs. That's exactly what these three agreements, especially Colombia, does, and I urge its passage. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
Now my pleasure to yield 3 minutes to a member, a very active member of our committee, Mr. Doggett of the great state of Texas.
I thank the gentleman. We need a new 21st century trade policy that encourages more trade without encouraging a race to the bottom in conditions for our workers and the quality of the air we breathe and the water we drink. Trade agreements should not be measured solely with regard to how many tons of goods move across a border, but they must consider the impact on how our workers are treated, how our environment is treated. And that's the very kind of trade policy that President Obama has said repeatedly he's committed to. Trade adjustment assistance is just not a substitute for a new trade policy that recognizes too often American jobs have been a leading American export. All three of these Bush-Cheney trade agreements are deficient, but this one in particular shows just how far those who think that the only thing that matters in trade policy is the volume of goods from one country to another to the exclusion of everything else.
On this vote, the yeas are 192 and the nays are 236, and the motion is not adopted. The question is on passage of the bill, and those in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise? For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise?
The recorded vote. Ask for the
A
yeas and
recorded
nays.
vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, the recorded vote is ordered, and members will record their vote by electronic device, and this will be a 5-minute vote.
The motion to recommit fails. The motion to recommit fails, and the House moves on with the final passage on the Colombia Free Trade Bill. We've opened up our Facebook page for your comments, facebook.com/cspan if you want to weigh in with your thoughts. You'll also get a chance tomorrow morning on Washington Journal. 2 members will be joining us to talk about the free trade bills. Charles Bass from New Hampshire, 7:45, and at 8:30, Democrat Marcy Kaptur of Ohio. The Journal gets underway tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. There's a 5-minute vote, final passage on the free trade bill with Colombia, and back to some of the debate from earlier today.
Yes, supporters of this free trade agreement have forgotten it's not free. It's not free to those who attempt to represent workers in Colombia. Last year, 49 trade union members were murdered in Colombia, and this year it's already up to 20. Human Rights Watch has just reported that there is virtually no progress in securing murder convictions. They got 6 out of 195 union member murders that were actually convicted. In 9 of 10 cases, the Colombians haven't even identified a suspect in these murders. You can talk of an action plan, and that's fine, but it's just like talk of a new trade policy. It's just talk and nothing else. This agreement denies any enforcement provision on the action plan that would make it actionable. LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens, opposes this agreement, quite rightly calling for a new American trade policy that promotes living wages and sustainable jobs, encourages human rights, labor standards, and a healthy environment, not only here, but among each of our trading partners. Instead, today's agreement emplaces the principle that violence against the very people who make the goods being traded will be disregarded, will be overlooked, if only we can increase the trade volume of what they make. Reject this misguided agreement. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
I yield myself such time as I may consume, just to clear the record up that obviously the murder of any citizen in any country is something to be avoided, but let's just set the record straight that the homicide rate since 2002 against union members has declined 85% in Colombia. I think this is an example that the efforts of the Colombian government are succeeding. And the homicide rate for the general population declined by 44%. And it's now, and kidnappings as well have declined. The ILO has also removed Colombia from their labor watch list. They did that in 2010. And recognizing their collective bargaining rules, recognizing the measures they've adopted to combat violence against trade union members. And so we have a very different picture being painted by the reality there. I would also point out that 3 main labor confederations have called the Labor Action Plan the most significant social achievement in Colombia in 50 years. And with that, I yield a minute to the distinguished gentleman from Florida, Mr. Diaz-Balart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank Chairman Camp. I thank not only for that great explanation that he just did, but for bringing this bill to the floor. Look, I keep hearing a lot about the horrors of Colombia. A couple facts. Because of the Andean Trade Pact Preferential Act, Colombian goods that come to the United States already basically come almost tariff-free. This would even it out, so our products created by American labor here can go to Colombia with the same preferential treatment. Fact number one. And fact number two, the Chairman just talked about this. I keep hearing about this Colombia, which is really, frankly, a caricature, an offensive caricature of what Colombia really is. As if we can just throw these things out there, pretending that it doesn't mean anything. Colombia is a democratic ally, Mr. Speaker. They have taken incredible steps to move forward to lower violence, to lower crime, to lower narco-trafficking. They're even now training police forces across the world, including Mexico, in their fight against narco-terrorism. It's an offensive caricature
Gentleman, an additional 30 seconds.
Gentleman is recognized for an additional 30 seconds. Mr. Speaker, it's an offensive caricature of Colombia, a democratic ally, a place that is fighting for democracy and for freedom and for due process and the rule of law. We should recognize it, commend them, thank them for being such an ally, for being a democracy. Mr. Speaker, isn't it ironic that a lot of the people that want to do business with Castro's Cuba, where labor unions aren't even permitted, complain about Colombia because they are a democracy, because they're an ally, because they're doing the right thing. Let's pass this common sense thing. Let's also thank the President for finally doing what he said he was going to do a long time ago when he said that it was time to pass this. It's better late than never, Mr. President, but thank you for finally sending it.
Time of the gentleman's expired. Gentleman from Michigan, seek recognition.
I do. It's now my privilege to yield one.
And the nays are 167, and the bill is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The unfinished business is the vote on passage of H.R. 3079, on which the yeas and nays were ordered, and the clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 157, H.R. 3079, a bill to implement the United States-Panama Trade Promotion Agreement.
The question is on passage of the bill. Members will record their votes by electronic device, and this will be a 5-minute vote, a 5-minute vote.
The House passes the Colombia Free Trade Agreement by a vote of 262 to 167. They move on to final passage of the Panama Free Trade Bill. The Korea bill is next, and that'll be followed by the renewal of the trade preference programs and the Trade Adjustment Assistance Program. So four more 5-minute votes will follow this one. And we take you now to some of the earlier debate on the Panama bill.
To revise and extend my
Without
remarks.
objection, it's so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of the pending trade agreements, all 3 trade agreements with Colombia, South Korea, and Panama. In my home state of Washington, where 1 in 3 jobs is dependent on international trade, we understand the importance of expanding foreign markets for economic success. There is no question, Mr. Speaker, that these agreements will increase jobs. Let me give you an example on a parochial basis in my district. Today, potato growers and processors face an 18% tariff when sending their product to South Korea. This agreement will end that tariff immediately, allowing our growers to fairly compete in this very important market. It is critical to my constituents that we act now on all 3 of these trade agreements. Let me be parochial again, Mr. Speaker. Apple sales in Colombia dropped 48% last year because Chile had duty-free access to the Colombian market, while my growers in my state did not. In fact, they had a 15% tariff. The passage of this agreement is expected to increase Apple sales by 250,000 boxes a year, allowing us to regain a market share or at least to compete on a level playing field. As our economy is struggling to recover, I encourage all my colleagues to act now to support all 3 of these trade agreements, because all 3 of these trade agreements will expand an opportunity for our economy to grow, and especially, Mr. Speaker, especially the agriculture and diverse agriculture economy I have in Central Washington. And with that, I thank the gentleman for yielding and yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. For what purpose, gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin?
I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Doggett, a member of our committee.
The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Doggett, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. While this agreement, based upon the flawed framework of the Bush-Cheney administration, offers no model for the future with regard to workers or environmental protection, I am supporting today's measure because of a successful response to a long-standing concern that I have had. That is Panama's status as a notorious tax haven, a place where taxpayers who refuse to pay their fair share of the cost of our national security and vital public services could go to hide their assets and dodge taxes. Over 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, Senator Carl Levin and I urged the administration to postpone the approval of this trade agreement until Panama first signed a tax information exchange agreement where we could get information about assets hidden there, and change its laws regarding bank secrecy and other matters to assure that this agreement was meaningful. Panama has now met these conditions. For the first time ever, we can obtain information from the Panamanian government on U.S. taxpayers who have Panamanian assets or income. Though the Treasury Department should have secured a stronger automatic information exchange similar to the one we have with Canada and 24 other countries, and I would much prefer also to see an actual record of Panamanian compliance, we need to accept this agreement as a victory in the fight against offshore tax cheats. This would not have been possible had it not been for the strong Panamanian desire to get the trade agreement approved. By also agreeing to 12 other exchange agreements on tax information, Panama was recently removed from the OECD gray list of tax havens. Now we must ensure that Panama's newfound openness and transparency does not end with approval of today's agreements. I support this trade agreement, knowing that while it could have been much better, the dangers have been mitigated with an agreement that has a very modest scope. I yield back.
This is expired. For what purpose, gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Kucinich, rise?
I yield myself 1 minute.
Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 1 minute.
The rights of workers, which have increasingly come under attack in this country, are also at risk under these NAFTA-style trade agreements. In Panama, a 2010 State Department Human Rights report notes that, quote, the government lacked sufficient mechanisms to ensure that laws prohibiting employer interference in unions and protecting workers from employer reprisals were adequately enforced. So the government lacked sufficient mechanisms to make sure that they're adequately enforced. We shouldn't be entering into a trade agreement with a country that has yet to demonstrate its ability to uphold international standards for labor rights and financial regulation. Panama's track record on fulfilling its promises is clear. Just as it failed to adequately address its status as a tax haven wonderland, it has failed in its
Nays are 129, and the bill is passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. And the unfinished business is the vote on passage of H.R. 3080, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.